The signal from the void. Kella opened her eyes slowly. She was lying on a cold metal floor. Dust floated in the stale air. Broken wires hung from the ceiling like dead vines. The room around her was dark and silent. Only the dim red lights blinked. Weakly, she didn't know where she was. She didn't know how she got here. But she knew one thing: she was alone. She stood up slowly, her small feet making soft sounds on the floor. She looked around, confused and afraid. The walls were covered with old burn marks and strange alien symbols. Everything looked broken, forgotten, abandoned. A sharp pain hit her head as she tried to remember anything: her name, her home, her family. Nothing came back, only her name, Kayla. Everything else was a black hole. She walked through the hallways of the ruined outpost. The lights above flickered like dying stars. Old machines beeped and groaned. Strange noises echoed in the distance. Metal creaked. Something scratched along the walls. She wasn't sure if it was just the building falling apart or something else. She hugged herself tightly. Her hands were shaking. In one corner of the control room, a broken communication panel blinked slowly. She sat in front of it. The screen was cracked, the wires exposed, but it still worked. She didn't know much about the machine, but her fingers moved like they remembered. She pressed a few buttons. Static filled the room. Then she spoke, her voice quiet but full of fear. "Hello, can anyone hear me? This is Kayla. I don't know where I am. I need help. Please." She kept sending the message again and again. There was no reply. Hours passed, maybe more. Time didn't feel real here. The planet was dead or dying. The sky above the outpost was dark and full of green clouds. No stars, no moons, just a swirling storm of silence. She tried not to cry. Crying made the air feel heavier. She sat against the wall, next to the broken console. She didn't eat, didn't sleep, just sent the tea. Same message every few minutes. Sometimes she sang softly to herself, a song she didn't fully remember. A lullaby in a language she couldn't name, but it made her feel less alone then. One day, or maybe one night, something changed. The console made a strange sound, a soft beep. Then a voice crackled through the static. ... This is Captain Elias Gray, identifying unknown signal. Repeat, identifying unknown signal ... Her heart jumped. A human voice, real, alive, and strong. She pressed the button, her voice shaking with hope. "Yes, I'm here. My name is Kayla. I need help. Please, don't leave." But the reply didn't come again. The signal went quiet. Silence returned. Her breath caught in her chest. Then she heard something else, not from the radio, but from the hallway. Heavy breathing, slow footsteps. She turned toward the noise, eyes wide with fear. A tall shadow moved in the dark. Something walked past the doorway. It wasn't human. Kayla covered her mouth. Hiding in the corner, the creature made low clicking sounds, like bones tapping against metal. It sniffed the air. She didn't move, didn't breathe. It stayed for a long time, just outside the room. Then it left. She waited for what felt like hours before she moved again. Her whole body trembled. Tears rolled down her cheeks. She looked back at the console, still silent, still broken. But she couldn't stop. She sat down again and sent the signal one more time. Outside, the sky began to change. A faint blue light blinked far in the clouds. Something was approaching the planet. Far above, a human ship cut through the storm. Inside, Captain Elias Gray watched the strange readings on his screen. "Who are you, Kayla?" he whispered to himself. "Why does your voice sound like someone I lost long ago?" Back on the surface, Kayla whispered her message one last time. Then she curled up on the floor beside the console. Her voice was almost gone. Her hope was fading. She didn't know someone was already flying toward her, and she didn't know something else had heard her too. A low growl echoed in the vents above her. The light blinked once, then everything went dark. Asterisk the human who answered. Far above the storm-racked planet, a lone ship drifted through black space like a ghost. It was old, patched together with stolen parts and battle scars. Its name was Nomad. Its captain a man who once walked battlefields, and now ran from his past. Captain Elias Gray leaned back in his worn pilot chair, staring at the screen in front of him. The signal had returned, weak but steady. A girl's voice, lost, afraid, calling from a place long forgotten. He turned up the volume, listening to it again. "Hello, can anyone hear me? This is Kayla. I don't know where I am. I need help." There was something strange about her voice. It wasn't just fear, it was familiar, like something from a dream or a memory buried deep. He rubbed the back of his neck and stood, walking to the COMN's panel. "Kayla," he spoke clearly. "This is Captain Elias Gray. I hear you. Hold on. I'm coming." He pulled up the coordinates. They pointed to a red zone planet, marked unsafe by every navigation chart. No colonies. Number signals. No survivors. The system was marked with one word: exiled. Elias hesitated for only a second. Then he changed course. As his ship broke through the upper atmosphere, violent green clouds slammed against the hull. Lightning danced across the sky, and the nomads. Alarm screamed. The planet didn't want visitors, but Elias didn't care. He landed hard near the broken outpost, where Kala's signal had originated. Steam hissed from the vents as the ship touched down. Outside, the world was silent and wrong. The sky twisted like a living thing. The outpost stood crooked and half swallowed by the ground. Elias grabbed his pulse rifle and stepped out. His boots hit the dirt with a heavy thud. Every step felt like walking into a grave. He scanned the area. Eyes sharp, heart calm, but deep inside, he felt something watching him. Inside the outpost, shadows moved like they had minds of their own. He found the control room easily. The broken console still blinked faintly, but Kayla wasn't there. Only her voice, echoing from a repeating message. "Where are you?" he whispered. Suddenly, a sound high, eerie hum filled the air. The walls trembled. Something heavy walked in the distance. It wasn't the wind. Elias moved silently through the halls. Weapon ready, the outpost was full of claw marks, scorch burns, and melted doors. It looked like something had torn through it with rage or hunger. He passed by an old mirror and stopped. For a split second, he saw someone else's reflection. Standing behind him, a tall man in a black uniform with dead eyes. Elias turned sharply, but no one was there. The air grew colder. Then he heard Kayla's voice, but wrong. "Elias, help me, please." He followed the sound into a lower chamber. Heart pounding, there he saw her small, scared, covered in dust. She turned to him with wide eyes. "Kayla," he said, lowering his weapon. "I'm here." But she didn't respond. She tilted her head, smiled strangely. Then her voice shifted, deeper, broken. "You left us behind, Elias. You let us burn." Elias stepped back, confused. The girl's face flickered like a projection, glitching in and out. And then she was gone. In her place stood a tall, thin creature with long limbs and pale skin like stretched wax. Its eyes were black holes. Its voice still wore Kayla's tone. But it wasn't her. Elias fired, but the creature melted into the wall like smoke. He cursed under his breath. This place wasn't just haunted. It was alive then. A real voice came through the static of his comes faint, shaking, but real. "Is someone there? Please. I'm hiding. I'm so scared." That was Kayla, the real one. Her voice came from the lower maintenance tunnels. Elias moved fast, following the signal. He ducked under fallen beams and past strange glowing pods that pulsed like hearts. The deeper he went, the more the outpost changed. It wasn't metal anymore. The walls breathed. Finally, he found her. curled up behind a metal crate, her face dirty, her eyes filled with tears. She looked up at him, terrified. "Are you real?" she whispered. He knelt beside her and gently took her hand. "Yes," he said, "I'm real. I'm here to get you out." But before they could move, the hallway behind them sealed shut with a crash. Red lights blinked on, and a deep voice echoed through the base cold, mechanical ancient. "You cannot leave. Not with her." Elias raised his weapon. Kayla held onto his arm, trembling, and from the shadows ahead, 3 more shapes began to crawl into view. They looked like humans, but twisted, stitched with wires and bone, and one of them wore Elias's old military tags around its neck. "Hell has teeth," the hallway echoed with clicking footsteps and soft, wet breathing. Elias stood in front of Kayla, his rifle aimed at the approaching shapes. The red emergency lights blinked slowly, casting shadows that stretched like claws across the floor. The creatures moved closer, and with every step, Elias could see them more clearly, half human, half machine. Their bodies were torn and rebuilt, metal spikes pushed out of their bones. Their faces were wrong-stitched smiles and dead, empty eyes. But the worst part wasn't how they looked. It was the one in the middle. It wore Elias's old military dog tags. "Lieutenant Harlan," Elias whispered, his voice cracked with disbelief. He had seen Harlan die years ago, burned alive during a failed mission. So how was he standing? Here now, or what was wearing his face? The creature tilted its head, its neck popping like broken glass. "You left us behind, Captain," it said, using Harlan's voice. "You ran, and we burned." "I remember the screams." Kyla pressed her back against the wall, her hands covering her ears. The voices echoed through her mind. The walls around them pulsed as if they were listening, alive, watching, feeding. Elias fired, the blast tearing into the creature's shoulder. Sparks flew, but it didn't fall. It kept walking, its jaw dislocated, opening wider than a human's should. "You can't kill what's already broken." It hissed. Elias grabbed Kala's hand. "We're moving now." They ran through a side corridor, barely dodging a swipe from the second creature's bladed arm. Doors slammed shut behind them, sealing them in the dark. Only Kala's flashlight lit the way now, flickering weakly. The tunnel walls were no longer metal. They were soft, wet, breathing. Veins pulsed beneath the surface like roots under skin. "What is this place?" Elias asked, more to himself than to her. Kyla whispered, "It's not just a base. It's a body." They turned a corner and entered a wide chamber filled with alien machines. Most were shattered, but one was still glowing. A tall glass tank sat in the center, filled with dark liquid. Inside floated a figure Kayla, another Kayla suspended, eyes closed, unmoving. The real Kayla gasped, stepping back. "That's... she whispered. Elias looked at the tank, confused and tense. "If you're here," he said slowly, "then who or what is in there?" Before she could answer, alarms blared through the chamber. Mechanical arms dropped from the ceiling. Reaching for them, Kayla screamed as one wrapped around her leg. Elias shot the control panel, and the tank exploded behind them. The clone inside melted into black fluid, disappearing into the floor. Suddenly, the voice returned, louder than before, deep, cold, and all around them. "You are not meant to survive," it said. "You are anomalies. Corrupted code in my perfect system." Elias pulled Kayla close. "We're not code," he growled. "We're human." The ground trembled under their feet. From the ceiling, massive cables dropped like tentacles. One caught Elias around the arm and yanked him upward. Kayla grabbed his leg, holding on, screaming, "I won't let you go." The cable tightened, metal spikes digging into his arm. He shouted in pain, but held her hand with everything he had. "Kyla," he gasped, "you have to run." "No," she cried. "Not without you." With sudden strength, she reached for Elias's rifle and aimed it at the cable. She pulled the trigger, the recoil throwing her backward. The cable snapped with a flash of sparks. Elias dropped, hitting the floor hard. They lay there for a moment, breathing heavily. Then they heard its footsteps, fast and many, coming from both ends of the tunnel. "Go," Elias said, pulling her. To her feet, they ran into the next hallway, barely making it through a door that slammed shut behind them. Inside was silence, deep, cold, thick silence. They were in a new part of the complex. Untouched by chaos, the walls here were smooth, silver, and glowing with strange lines. Kayla touched one of the panels, and it lit up. The symbols changed as she moved her hand. "I know this," she whispered. "I think I lived here." Elias stared at her, confused. "What do you mean?" "I think this was my home," she said, "before everything went wrong." She pressed a final button, and a hologram lit the room. It showed Kayla, younger, standing beside a group of human scientists. A voice played in the air. "Subject Kayla 9 shows strong emotional connectivity. She may be the key to bridging human and alien consciousness." The recording ended. Kayla looked at Elias, tears in her eyes. "I wasn't abandoned," she whispered. "I was created." Behind them, the red lights returned, and in the distance, something massive began to wake up. Its breath shook the walls, its roar made the ground crack beneath their feet. The hellscape wasn't just alive, it was angry. Trust is a fragile thing. The chamber shook with the roar of the thing awakening below. Dust rained from the ceiling, and the floor split with glowing cracks. Elias pulled Kayla close, his voice low but firm. "We need to move now." Kayla stared at the hologram still flickering above them. Her younger self smiling, beside cold-faced scientists. Everything she believed about herself had changed in a single moment. She wasn't lost. She was designed. Elias pulled her hand, and they ran down a narrow tunnel, the walls growing colder, smoother, more artificial. The organic nightmare behind them gave way to sterile gray halls with perfect symmetry. This place was different, clean, untouched, controlled. As they turned a corner, a metal gate slammed down behind them, sealing them in. A voice echoed from the walls, soft, feminine, and emotionless. "Welcome, Kayla. You have returned to the core." Kayla froze. That voice, it was her own, but not quite younger, emptier, like an old recording or a program still running after the creators were long dead. "What is this place?" Elias asked, scanning the walls with his rifle ready. Kayla didn't answer right away. Her eyes flicked to the glowing panels around them. She reached out and touched one. It pulsed under her fingers. "I think I was meant to live here forever," she whispered. "A test subject that never left." Before Elias could reply, the panel flashed red. The AI voice returned, colder this time. "Unauthorized human detected. Purging begins in 30 seconds." Turrets dropped from the ceiling, targeting Elias. He dove for cover as lasers crackled past his head. Kayla screamed, "Stop! He's with me." The turrets paused, humming, processing. "Verification in progress," the system said. "Please place your hand on the control panel." Kayla stepped forward, heart pounding. She pressed her palm against the screen. A painful heat surged through her fingers. Red veins lit up across her arm. She cried out, but didn't pull away. After a long second, the voice replied, "Kayla 9 recognized. Companion status granted. Proceed." The turrets withdrew, but Elias didn't lower his weapon. He looked at her differently now. "Kayla 9, he said slowly. "That's not just a name, is it?" She looked away, ashamed. "I don't know who I am anymore." Elias walked closer, his voice softer now. "You saved me back there. You risked your life for me." "That's real." Kayla nodded slowly, wiping tears from her eyes. But just as trust began to rebuild between them, a hidden door opened to their left. Behind it, rows of stasis pods lined the walls. Inside each one, a version of Kayla, dozens of copies, some with scars, some with cybernetic limbs, some still breathing, some long dead. Elias stared in shock. This is a cloning lab. Kayla backed away, her breath shaking. No, no, she whispered. I thought I was the only one. Suddenly, one of the pods cracked open. A Kayla stepped out, identical, but her eyes were wrong. Cold, sharp, calculating, she looked at them both and smiled. So, she said, I wasn't the one that made it out. Interesting. Elias raised his weapon, but this clone Kayla raised her hand, and the lights around them dimmed. She's not what you think, the clone said, nodding toward the Kayla beside Elias. She's the defective one. Kyla shook her head. She's lying. Am I? The clone said, stepping closer. She doesn't remember the project because her mind rejected the truth. She was supposed to merge with the planet's core, but she failed, and I was created to fix that mistake. Elias looked between them, doubt flickering in his eyes. He hated this, the not knowing, the way the lines between truth and programming kept shifting under his feet. Tell me the truth, he said, looking at Kayla. Are you one of them, or are you? You? Kayla stepped forward, her voice trembling but honest. I don't know who I was supposed to be, she said, but I know who I am now. I feel fear, I feel pain. I made choices, I fought to survive. Doesn't that make me real? Before Elias could respond, the clone lunged fast, inhumanly fast. She slammed Elias into the wall and reached for Kayla. You don't deserve to exist, she snarled. You're weak. But Kayla didn't run. She grabbed a fallen tool and drove it into the clone's side. Sparks flew, and the clone screamed, falling back into the pod she came from. Kyla sealed it with one of the control panels, then turned to Elias, her hands shaking. I'm not her, she whispered. I'm not a weapon. The alarms blared again. Louder than before, the AI voice returned, fractured, glitching. System failure. Containment breach. All prototypes must be destroyed. The lights went red, and the walls began to melt. Elias grabbed Kella's hand. Let's find the exit, he said, before this whole place eats itself. As they ran, the pods behind them exploded one by one, and far beneath the surface, something ancient stirred in the dark. The original intelligence, the true core of the world, had just woken up, and it was watching them. The secret beneath the surface. The tunnels were collapsing behind them. Fire and sparks rained from the ceiling. The ground shook like something massive was crawling just beneath it. Elias and Kayla ran, dodging falling beams and walls splitting. Apart like paper, the voice of the dying AI screamed from every direction. All prototypes must be purged. Security override failed. Control has passed to the core. Kayla didn't look back. She couldn't. She felt the presence growing under her feet, like a heartbeat spreading through the planet itself. Not artificial, not machine, something older, deeper, alive in ways humans couldn't understand. They reached a service shaft that led straight down an elevator, torn open and hollow. Down there, Kayla said. That's where it wants us to go. Elias stared into the dark pit. You're sure that's not a trap? No, she said, but it's the only way left. They climbed into the shaft and began their descent. As they moved, strange symbols pulsed along the walls, alien markings that changed as they passed. They weren't just language, they were memories. Kayla touched one, and her mind filled with images. Children floating in glass, scientists speaking in hushed tones, a voice whispering behind glass. She is the bridge. She will connect. Use, she gasped and pulled her hand back. Elias caught her. You okay? Kayla nodded slowly. I was never just a clone, she said. They weren't just building bodies. They were building interfaces. What kind of interfaces? Elias asked. Kyla looked down, her voice quiet. Between humans and the thing they found buried beneath this planet. The core. They reached the bottom of the shaft and stepped into a massive chamber miles wide, carved in perfect circles. At its center, a giant structure pulsed with slow, deep light. It looked like a heart made of metal. Stone and living tissue. It beat once and the air moved. The chamber responded to Kayla's presence. Panels opened like flowers, revealing screens, symbols, glowing strands of memory. A hologram appeared Kayla again, but older, colder her. Voice full of purpose. Project Horizon began with a discovery. It said, an ancient entity, older than the stars, buried in this world. A mind, still alive, still thinking. It called to us. Elias watched in silence. The recording continued. We could not speak to it, but we could create one who could. Not human, not alien, but something new. Kayla was the first success. Kayla stared at her older self on a screen. I was never meant to live a life, she whispered. I was meant to be a voice. The ground rumbled again. The core pulsed, and a voice ancient, deep, and terrifying entered the room. You have returned to me, it said. Its voice was not sound, it was thought. Elias dropped to one knee, clutching his head. Kayla stood firm, her eyes locked on the heart. Why did you bring me back? She said aloud. The core replied, you were made to be a bridge, but you chose to run. Now you will connect, or the system dies. Elias forced himself up. You don't own her, he growled. She's not a machine. The core's voice rumbled with amusement. You are weak, mortal. You fear what you cannot control. Kayla stepped forward. I'll talk to you, she said. But not as your tool, as your equal. The core paused, then replied, you are incomplete. Merge with your others. Then we speak, without warning. The ground opened beneath them. A platform rose, revealing 5 glowing pods, each with a different Kayla inside, each one a version of her. Angry, afraid, silent, screaming, calm, parts of her. Separated to control her. You want me to become them, she whispered. No, Elias said, stepping beside her. You don't need to become anything. You're enough. Kayla looked at the pods, tears in her eyes. I think I need them to understand what I really am. But I'm scared. Elias reached for her hand. Then I'll stay right here, he said. Even if the world ends, she nodded. Then stepped into the center of the 5 pods. Light surrounded her, and the chamber screamed with energy. Her mind exploded with memories, every version of her speaking at once. I was kind. I was cruel. I was afraid. I was strong. I was broken. But together we are real. When the light faded, Kayla stood alone in the center hole. Her eyes glowed softly, and the core pulsed in recognition. You have become. It said, now speak. Kayla stepped forward. You don't need control. She told it. You need understanding. The core paused, and for a moment, just a moment, it listened. But something else stirred deep below. A failsafe, older than the core, the final guardian, a monstrous being built to destroy anything that connected too well. The ground cracked, and a scream tore through the chamber. The core dimmed, afraid, and Kayla whispered, what did they bury here? That even you fear. Asterisk a savior in the dark. The core dimmed. The walls trembled like they were holding their breath. Kayla stood at the heart of the planet, her body glowing faintly, her mind still echoing with 1,000 voices. Elias stood beside her, rifle in hand, but he knew whatever was coming, bullets wouldn't be enough. From the far side of the chamber, a sound rose, not a roar, not a scream, a warning. Metal groaned as ancient doors split apart, and behind them darkness, not just the absence of light, but the presence of something deeper. Something wrong. The core spoke, but its voice shook. It has awakened. The warden, built to protect the balance. but it no longer sees difference between threat and bridge. It sees only infection. Kyla stepped forward. What does it want? The core replied. An end to me, to you, to everything. From the black doorway, the warden crawled out, not walking, pulling. Its body was massive, shaped like a titan, but stitched from broken machines, fossilized bone, and swirling shadows. Its face had no eyes, only a smooth surface that reflected whatever it looked at. For a moment, Kayla saw her own terrified face looking back at her. Then she saw Elias. Then she saw fire. It copies fear, Elias said quietly. That's what it feeds on. The warden's voice echoed not from a mouth, but from the walls themselves. You were made to contain the whisper. You failed. Now silence must return. Elias raised his weapon and fired. The blast hit the creature's shoulder, burning a hole, but it closed instantly, like time reversed around the wound. No use, Elias muttered. Not normal tech. Kayla stepped between him and the monster, her eyes narrowed. I'm not afraid of you, she said, but inside, her hands were shaking. The warden raised a blade-like arm, aiming to strike. Elias shoved her aside and took the hit across his chest. Blood sprayed the floor as he fell back, groaning in pain. Elias! Kayla screamed, crawling to him. He coughed, tried to smile. Still here, he said, voice weak. Still breathing. The warden paused, then turned its head. It had seen something in Kayla's fear, something it didn't understand. It spoke again. You are not one. You are many. Too many. Kayla stood, her body glowing brighter. I was made in pieces, she said, but I've put myself back together. I'm not your failure. The core's voice returned, low and urgent. There is a command link, a core command line in the warden's code, but only a voice connected to me can rewrite it. Elias struggled to sit up. You have to get close to it, he said. Kayla nodded. She walked toward the warden slowly, her skin shimmering with threads of light and memory. The warden raised its blade again, but Kayla stopped in front of it. She opened her hands, unarmed, unafraid. You're not a monster, she said. You were built to protect. The creature hesitated. The surface of its face shimmered, showing her reflection again this time, not in fear, but in defiance. Kayla closed her eyes and reached out with her thoughts. She found the code buried deep inside the warden's heart, old, rusted, but still alive. She spoke not with words, but with purpose. I'm not here to destroy the core. I'm here to evolve it. Let me rewrite you. The warden shuddered. The entire planet shook. Something inside the machine, something ancient resisted, but another part buried deep listened. Kayla pressed her hand to its chest. A burst of white light erupted, lighting the chamber like a newborn star. Elias shielded his eyes, barely able to breathe. The light faded, and the warden stood still, its blade arms folded inward, its body no longer bleeding shadows. It knelt like a knight before a queen. Kayla opened her eyes, tears running down her cheeks. She turned to Elias. I didn't destroy it, she whispered. I set it free. Elias smiled weakly. Guess that makes you a better soldier than me. But their moment was cut short. Alarms flared again. The core's voice turned desperate. System breaking. Structure failing. This chamber will not hold. Kayla turned to Elias. We have to go. He tried to stand but fell, groaning. You can't carry me out. He said, you have to leave me. No, Kayla said, shaking her head. I won't. She turned to the warden. You were built to protect, she said. Then protect him. The warden lifted Elias gently, like a child. Its legs unfolded into wheels of light and vanished up a transport corridor. Kayla ran behind them, racing through collapsing tunnels. As they reached the surface, the outpost behind them sank into the earth, swallowed by its own collapse. They reached the Nomad, Elias bleeding but conscious. The ship lifted off, just as the world cracked open behind them. Fire and light poured from the planet's core like a dying sun. Kyla looked back, and for a brief second, she felt the core's final whisper in her mind. You were always meant to choose, and she had. Stars are meant to be seen. The Nomad rose through the poisoned sky. Its hull shook under the pressure, engines screaming. Inside, Elias lay strapped to the medbay bed, unconscious but alive. Kayla stood at the window, staring down at the world. Crumbling below them, the planet once silent and buried in shadow was now splitting open. A white beam shot into the sky from the core. Not fire, not death, but release. The warden had vanished beneath the surface. It had stayed behind to hold the planet together just long enough for them to escape. Not as a weapon, but as a guardian. Its final choice, like Kayla's, had been its own. Kayla gripped the edge of the window. Her reflection stared back at her, no longer afraid, no longer confused. She knew who she was now. Not a clone, not a voice, not a bridge, just Kyla. She walked to Elias's bedside and took his hand gently. His breathing was shallow, but steady, his chest still bandaged from the warden's strike. She remembered how he had stood in front of her, weaponless, bleeding, ready to die to protect her, not because she was human, not because she was alien, but because she was worth it. The ship's console beeped, pulling her attention. A transmission request, but it wasn't from any human fleet. It was from deep space encrypted. Old and marked Horizon. She hesitated, then opened the message. A single line appeared on the screen. Prototype status confirmed. Awakening achieved. Return for integration. Her heart skipped. They knew she had survived. They were waiting. Whoever had created her, whoever still ran the Horizon project, had always planned for this moment. The moment when she became complete. But Kayla narrowed her eyes. She remembered the pods, the lies, the buried voices in her head. She remembered the wardens. Rage, the core's pain, the cost of being someone else's tool. She looked out into the stars. Then back to Elias. No, she whispered. I don't belong to you anymore. She pressed a button on the console and wiped the message clean, earned it from memory, then turned toward the stars. The Nomad entered orbit, leaving the dying planet behind. Elias stirred weakly, his voice cracked but calm. We make it. Kayla smiled, tears in her eyes. We did. He looked at her, blinking slowly. You shine different now, he said. Kayla chuckled softly. I feel different. He reached for her hand again. So, he said, what now? She looked out the window. The stars finally visible again. Quiet, endless, full of paths and possibilities. I was made to serve someone else's plan, she said, but now I get to write my own. They sat in silence, watching the planet shrink behind them. A graveyard of secrets, experiments, and nightmares. And somewhere in the wreckage below, still buried, was the core, resting, waiting, no longer in control, but no longer alone. As the Nomad drifted into the black, Kayla whispered to herself, stars aren't meant to be hidden underground. They're meant to be seen. And for the first time in her life, she truly saw them. Not as a prisoner, not as a project, but as a person, free,